The false victory. The crystal spires of the Kethran flagship. Dominion's edge gleamed against the backdrop of distant stars as Admiral Zix Korthak raised his ceremonial chalice high above his six-armed frame. The bridge erupted in triumphant roars from dozens of species that made up the Galactic Enforcement Coalition. Purple-skinned Kethra, crystalline Vex, and gaseous Nethys all celebrated together in the vast command center. Today marks the end of the human rebellion. Korthak's voice boomed through the ship's communication system, his three eyes gleaming with satisfaction. After 12 long years of their stubborn resistance, Earth has finally submitted to galactic law. The Sol system now belongs to the Coalition, and every human settlement has been pacified or abandoned. Commander Thale Voss, a younger Kethran with distinctive silver markings across his blue exoskeleton, studied the tactical displays with growing unease. Something felt wrong about this victory. The human surrender had come too easily, too suddenly. One day they were fighting with desperate fury, the next they simply stopped. Their communications went silent, their ships powered down, and their colonies transmitted unconditional surrender. "Sir?" Voss approached his superior carefully. "The final casualty reports from the human territories show remarkably low numbers. For a species that fought so fiercely, their final resistance was pathetic," Korthak interrupted with a dismissive wave of two of his arms. "Humans are emotional creatures, Voss. When they finally understood the futility of their cause, they collapsed like a house built on sand. This is why they never deserved a place among the civilized species." Across the galaxy, on what appeared to be a dead asteroid mining station in the belt between Mars and Jupiter, Captain Sarah Chen removed her environmental helmet and breathed recycled air that tasted of metal and determination. The woman's dark hair was streaked with premature gray from years of stress, but her brown eyes burned with quiet intensity. Around her, dozens of human technicians worked in absolute silence, their movements precise and purposeful. "Status report," she whispered to the nearest console operator. "All ghost stations are online and holding position," came the equally quiet response. "The Kethra believe this sector is abandoned debris. Our cloaking fields are functioning perfectly, and Dr. Webb's quantum scramblers are keeping us invisible to their scanners." Chen nodded, moving to the central command station where a holographic display showed the positions of over 300 hidden human installations throughout the Sol system. Each one appeared to be nothing more than space junk or abandoned structures to alien sensors. In reality, they formed the most sophisticated defense network ever constructed by human hands. Dr. Marcus Webb, a thin man whose nervous energy had kept him awake for most of the past 3 years, approached with a datapad clutched in his shaking hands. "Sarah, the final phase generators are ready. We can begin the awakening sequence on your command, but once we start, there's no going back. The galaxy will know we never truly surrendered." The captain's expression remained calm, but those who knew her could see the storm brewing behind her eyes. "How long did they give us to evacuate Earth, Marcus?" 72 hours. They said any humans remaining would be relocated to labor colonies. "And how many of our people actually left?" Webb swallowed hard. "Less than 10%. The rest went underground, literally. The deep bunkers can sustain our population for decades if necessary." Chen turned to address the silent workers around her. Though she spoke softly, her voice carried to every corner of the hidden station. "My friends, for 12 years we fought a war we couldn't win through conventional means. The Galactic Coalition has technology, numbers, and resources we could never match in open battle. So we chose a different path. We chose patience." She gestured to the holographic display, where hundreds of hidden human positions pulsed like sleeping heartbeats throughout the solar system. "While they celebrated their victories, we built. While they claimed our territories, we dug deeper. While they wrote our obituary, we prepared for resurrection." Meanwhile, aboard the Dominion's edge, Commander Voss's unease was growing stronger. His sensors were picking up unusual energy fluctuations from the inner system, patterns that didn't match natural phenomena or normal space debris. "Admiral," he said, his voice cutting through the ongoing celebration, "I'm detecting anomalous readings from the human territories. These energy signatures, they're not random. There's a pattern here. Korthak barely glanced at the displays. Probably residual discharge from their abandoned technology. Humans were never good at properly shutting down their systems. Nothing to concern ourselves with. But Voss wasn't convinced. He had studied human military tactics extensively during the war, and one thing had always impressed him about their species. They never did anything without a reason. The sudden surrender, the orderly evacuation, even the way they'd abandoned their outer colonies. It all followed patterns that suggested careful planning rather than desperate retreat. Sir, I recommend we send reconnaissance teams to investigate these anomalies. If nothing else, we should verify that the human territories are as empty as they claim. The Admiral's celebration mood was beginning to sour under his subordinates' persistent pessimism. Very well, Commander, send a patrol squadron to investigate. But when they find nothing but empty space and broken dreams, I want you to admit that your paranoia was unfounded. 3 Kethran scout ships detached from the main fleet and began their journey toward the inner system. Their crews were confident, even bored. After all, what threat could a defeated species possibly pose? Back on the asteroid station, Sarah Chen watched the approaching scouts on her tactical display. A slight smile crossed her weathered features. Dr. Webb, initiate Phase 1 of the Awakening Protocol. Phase 1 activated, Webb confirmed, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. Stealth barriers holding steady. The scouts won't detect anything until they're well within our perimeter. The lead Kethran scout ship, Swift Talon, glided through the asteroid belt with casual arrogance. Its captain, a young officer named Crix, Nethal, found the assignment beneath his skills. Investigating dead space seemed like punishment duty rather than a real mission. Sensors show normal debris patterns, his scanner operator reported. No life signs, no active technology, just floating rocks and metal fragments. But as they moved deeper into the belt, something changed. The Swift Talon's communications array began picking up faint signals, not random static, but organized transmissions using encryption patterns that seemed almost familiar. Captain, the communications officer said with growing alarm, these signals, they're using modified human encryption protocols, but that's impossible. Intelligence confirmed that all human military communications ceased weeks ago. Crix leaned forward in his command chair, his instincts finally awakening to potential danger. All stop. Begin full spectrum analysis of those signals. It was too late. Around them, what had appeared to be innocuous chunks of rock and metal began to change. Surfaces that looked like natural asteroid formations split open to reveal gleaming metal structures beneath. Weapons arrays that had been disguised as mining equipment rotated into targeting positions. And from the largest asteroid in the field, a massive dreadnought began to emerge like a sleeping giant awakening from a 1,000-year slumber. The human ship was unlike anything in the Kethran databases. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, giving it an almost ethereal appearance. Strange energy patterns danced across its surface, and its size dwarfed even the largest coalition battleships. Impossible, Crix whispered as his sensors struggled to process what they were seeing. This ship, it doesn't match any known human design. The technology readings are off the charts. On the bridge of the hidden dreadnought Prometheus Rising, Captain Chen watched the Kethran scouts with calm satisfaction. Her ship and dozens like it had been under construction in secret for the entire duration of the war. Built using revolutionary technology that humanity had developed while pretending to be on the brink of defeat. Captain, her tactical officer, reported, the Kethran scouts are attempting to withdraw. Should we intercept? No, Chen replied quietly. Let them run. Let them carry word back to their fleet. It's time the galaxy learned that reports of humanity's death have been greatly exaggerated. The Swift Talon and its companion ships fled the asteroid belt as fast as their engines could carry them. But the images they had recorded would change everything. Behind them, more human installations were coming online throughout the Sol system. What the Coalition had assumed was a graveyard was revealing itself to be the most sophisticated fortress humanity had ever constructed. Admiral Korthak's celebration, came to an abrupt end when the panicked reports from his scouts reached the Dominion's edge. The bridge fell silent as the recorded images played on the main screen, showing human ships and installations that shouldn't exist, displaying technology that shouldn't be possible. How? Was all the Admiral could manage to say. How did they hide this from us? Commander Voss studied the tactical data with professional appreciation, mixed with growing dread. Sir, these aren't hastily built defenses. This construction would have taken years, possibly decades, which means they were preparing for this war long before it started. Korthak finished, his voice hollow with the realization of how completely he had been deceived. Across the Sol system, humanity's hidden network was fully awakening. Space stations disguised as debris fields revealed themselves as massive weapon platforms. Seemingly abandoned colonies powered up defensive shields that made them nearly impregnable. And from the outer reaches of the system, where no one had thought to look carefully, more dreadnoughts were emerging from concealment behind moons and within asteroid fields. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The reckoning Admiral Zix Korthak stood frozen on the bridge of the Dominion's edge, as report after report flooded in from across the Sol system. Every sensor station, every scout ship, every monitoring post was sending the same impossible message. Humanity's abandoned territories were very much alive. Sir? Commander Voss's voice was tight with controlled panic. We're detecting over 50 major installations that our intelligence claimed were destroyed or evacuated. Power signatures suggest they've been active this entire time, just hidden from our scanners. The holographic display in the center of the bridge painted a terrifying picture. What had appeared to be a defeated solar system now revealed itself as a fortress of unprecedented scale. Human weapons platforms emerged from asteroid camouflage, defense stations powered up behind the shadows of moons, and those impossible dreadnoughts continued to materialize from seemingly empty space. How many ships? Korthak asked, though he dreaded the answer. Unknown, sir. Our sensors are having difficulty penetrating their stealth technology. Preliminary estimates suggest at least 100 major vessels, with possibly 3 times that number in support craft. But the most unsettling aspect wasn't the number of ships, it was their behavior. The human fleet wasn't attacking. They simply waited, holding position throughout the system like silent sentinels. Their weapons were powered but not aimed. Their shields were active but not advancing. They were sending a message without saying a word. We are here, we are ready, and we are not afraid. On the bridge of the Prometheus Rising, Captain Sarah Chen stood before her command crew with the calm confidence of someone who had spent years preparing for this exact moment. Her ship, along with its sister Dreadnoughts, represented the culmination of humanity's greatest scientific and engineering achievements, technology developed in secret, while the galaxy believed them to be primitive and defeated. Captain, her communications officer announced, "We're receiving transmission requests from the Catherine flagship. Admiral Korthak is demanding to speak with you." "Put him through," Chen replied, straightening her uniform. "It's time for some honest conversation." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Admiral Korthak. His 6 arms were held rigid with barely controlled fury, and his 3 eyes blazed with indignation. "What is the meaning of this deception?" he demanded without preamble. "Your species surrendered. Your world submitted to coalition authority. This is a violation of every galactic law regarding conquered territories." Sarah Chen's expression remained perfectly calm as she faced the alien admiral. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of years of preparation and the quiet strength of her entire species. "Admiral Korthak, humanity never surrendered. We simply chose to stop fighting a war on your terms so we could prepare to fight it on ours." The admission sent shockwaves through both fleets. On the coalition ships, officers struggled to understand how they had been so completely deceived. On the human vessels, crews felt a mixture of pride and apprehension as their secret was finally revealed. "You lied to the entire galaxy," Korthak accused, his voice rising. "Your leaders signed surrender documents. Your colonies transmitted compliance codes. Your military forces powered down their weapons. Our leaders signed documents that bought us time," Chen corrected. Our colonies transmitted exactly what we wanted you to hear. And our military forces never powered down. They just became invisible to your sensors. Dr. Marcus Webb, monitoring the conversation from his position at the science station, felt a mixture of pride and terror at how well their deception had worked. For 3 years, he had led the development of quantum masking, technology that could hide entire installations from the most sophisticated alien sensors. The key had been making them appear not as empty space, but as the kind of debris and wreckage that a defeated species would naturally leave behind. Commander Voss, studying the tactical readouts on his console, was beginning to understand the true scope of humanity's deception. "Admiral," he said quietly, "the energy signatures we're reading from their ships. This technology is decades ahead of anything in our databases. How long have they been preparing for this?" Chen overheard the question and chose to answer it directly. "Commander Voss, humanity began preparing for this war 80 years ago, when the first Galactic Coalition survey ships entered our system, and we realized we were not alone in the universe. We knew that first contact would eventually lead to conflict. It always does when a more advanced civilization encounters a less developed one. The revelation sent another shock through the Coalition fleet. 80 years of preparation, 80 years of careful planning, hidden construction, and technological development. Humanity hadn't just been fighting a defensive war, they had been playing a game of strategy that spanned generations. "So you chose deception over diplomacy," Korthak said, his voice heavy with accusation. "You could have sought peaceful integration into the galactic community." Sarah Chen's calm facade finally cracked, revealing the anger that had been building for over a decade. "Peaceful integration? Is that what you call demanding our unconditional surrender before we had even met? Is that what you call declaring our homeworld a restricted zone and our species a potential threat to galactic stability? Admiral, we sought peace from the moment your ships appeared in our sky. But you came here not as explorers or diplomats, you came as conquerors." The truth of her words hung heavy in the space between the two fleets. The Galactic Coalition had indeed approached humanity with ultimatums rather than open hands, viewing Earth's technological development as a potential threat that needed to be controlled or eliminated. "What happens now?" Korthak asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Chen's expression softened slightly, revealing the weariness of someone who had carried an enormous burden for far too long. "Now, Admiral, you have a choice to make. You can order your fleet to attack and discover just how advanced our defensive capabilities have become. Or you can sit down with us as equals and discuss what a real peace might look like." The silence that followed stretched across light years. On every ship in both fleets, beings from dozens of species waited to see which path their leaders would choose. The humans had demonstrated that they were not the defeated enemy the Coalition had believed them to be. But more importantly, they had shown restraint when they could have chosen revenge. Commander Voss was the first to break the silence. "Admiral, our tactical analysis suggests that attacking these installations would result in catastrophic losses for our forces. But more than that, they've had us at their mercy for the past hour and they haven't fired a single shot." Admiral Korthak studied the human captain on his screen, seeing her not as the defeated enemy he had expected but as a worthy opponent who had outmaneuvered him completely. Slowly, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Humanity hadn't just survived the war, they had won it before it even began. "You're offering us a chance to negotiate?" he asked. "I'm offering you a chance to start over," Chen replied. "To build the kind of relationship between our peoples that should have existed from the beginning. Humanity doesn't want to conquer the galaxy, Admiral. We just want to be part of it on our own terms." The communications channel fell silent as Korthak considered his options. Around him, his officers waited for orders that would determine the fate of both species. Behind him, the voice of Commander Voss spoke quietly but clearly. "Sir, they've proven they could have destroyed us at any point during this conversation. The fact that we're still alive suggests their offer of negotiation is genuine." Admiral Korthak looked once more at the tactical display showing the hidden might of humanity's defenses, then back at the face of Captain Chen on his screen. In her eyes, he saw not hatred or conquest, but hope. "Captain Chen," he said formally, "the Galactic Coalition accepts your offer of negotiation. Where would you suggest we begin?" Sarah Chen smiled for the first time in years, feeling the weight of generations of preparation and sacrifice finally bearing fruit. "I suggest we begin with the truth, Admiral. All of it. And then we work together to build something better than either of our species could achieve alone." As the two fleets moved into peaceful formation for the first time in over a decade, humanity's hidden watchers throughout the Sol system began the long process of revealing themselves to the galaxy. But they did so not as conquerors emerging from the shadows, but as equals ready to take their place among the stars. The war was over. The real work was just beginning.